Welcome to Licensed RPGs, where I review role-playing games based on books, movies, TV shows, cartoons, mangas, anime, and even comics. These games can include titles that are both officially licensed and unofficially licensed fan games. And if the title doesn't give it away, today's episode is of a fan game created using the RPG Maker VX engine. And while RPG Maker has been making fan games easier, the quality is always a little bit suspect in these games as well. So I guess that leaves us with a burning question. Does this game break the mold, or is it a mixed bag that requires an apology? Well, I'm here to answer that question if you are willing to sit down and listen. Despite the title of this game being Super Lesbian Horses RPG, the game is rather restrained on the topic. In fact, the most we really get on this angle is that Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash are lip-locking lesbians, but there are other pairings in the same situation being Twilight Sparkle and Pinkie Pie, and Rarity and Applejack. In fact, there's only one joke in this game can even be construed as beyond the kissing level. So despite the title, there is little in this game that is objectionable for a younger audience, unless you're heavily against the pairings on display for personal reasons. With that out of the way, the actual game is about Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash trying to go out on a date, but constantly being distracted from doing so. At first they are stopped by Twilight in order to go through a friendship dungeon, since nothing quite says friendship like intentionally asking people to put their lives on the line in the name of bonding. Though after wandering through Twilight's amateur dungeon, you stumble across Javas, a powerful mage from another dimension intent on helping his queen take over Equestria and remake it in her own image. With the universe at stake, Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash are forced to postpone their date in order to save the world once again. Along the way, we experience jokes that are sort of hit and miss, as well as some relationship drama with Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash. Character-wise, this work is probably a bit bent and twisted, to be honest, beyond the whole lesbian ponies thing. And while certain traits are still there, like Fluttershy taking care of animals and Twilight being obsessed with studying, the game also gives Rainbow Dash a personality more in line with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the third live-action movie. She seems to struggle in going a scene without saying tubular or radical. Maybe it's just me, but this slang feels heavily dated. It comes across like an adult trying to act hip and cool instead of being hip and cool. Broadly speaking, the game is pretty good for an RPG Maker game with well-crafted environments and solid sprite work. On the other hand, the game does suffer a little bit from a few consistency issues, in my opinion. A few enemies in this game have a look that is more reminiscent of a child filling in a coloring book with crayons than looking computer-generated like the bulk of the enemies. Another slight issue for the art is that if your characters get confused, they change colors on the bottom of the screen. But even if you cure the confused stats, their portrait will still be left with the colors inverted. And the last art issue to notice is that many of the enemies don't even feel like they could come from the show. I guess one could argue that a lot of the enemies come from this alternate dimension, but that only gives the game so much leeway and ignores the fact that the game doesn't seem to use any enemies from the actual show. Sound-wise, the game is decent, and even includes a few remixes to make the songs better fit in with the nature of the narrative. Sadly, this work doesn't make the songs feel any less generic and forgettable, in my opinion. But the hard work is appreciated, even if I can't remember it that well. And the closing song as the credits play is rather enjoyable to listen to, which is a necessity considering the credits take several minutes to play. Gameplay-wise, this game features the usual control layout for an RPG Maker game. So if you're familiar with any other games created using RPG Maker, you'll already know that Z is used to talk with people and confirm decisions, while X is used to cancel a selection or pull up the main menu. Outside of that, you move with the arrow keys. In terms of combat, the game is rather standard as well, featuring the usual staples of turn-based combat, though it goes even further than that, with each of the 4 playable characters having a specific role in combat. Fluttershy is the white mage, Rainbow Dash is the knight, Twilight is the black mage, and Applejack is the support character that draws enemy fire or provides status buffs. And while combat is rather standard, it's sometimes best to stick to the basics instead of trying to be clever. On the other side of things, the game doesn't include the usual random encounters, but instead has enemies that are visible on screen, even improves upon this mechanic slightly in my opinion, that once you clear a dungeon, it will remain cleared. On one hand, this will prevent you from level grinding in the dungeons in this game, but if you execute Order 66 on the enemies like I usually do when I enter an area in this game, then levels and finances for your MP recovery items won't be an issue. And please note the enemies will reappear in areas that aren't considered part of the dungeons if you move to another part of the map. So if you wish to perform extra level grind to give yourself an even greater edge over the bosses, you simply need to leave the dungeon and explore the area around it. Outside of the combat and controls, the only other thing to really touch on is that the maps in this game are rather well put together. The areas neither feel too small as to be insignificant like in Kanye Quest 3030 where you can walk from San Francisco to New York in under a minute, but don't feel so enormously huge as to be frustrating like in Santa's Quest. Super Lesbian Horses RPG is a pretty good game if you're into RPG Maker games, and is enjoyable for the 3 hours or so it'll take to beat. And to put that in perspective, a decent amount of the games created using various incarnations of RPG Maker that I've played so far can be beaten in under an hour. So this game does have a little meat on the bone, though I don't think that this game warrants more than one playthrough.